The guard is a vast area of knowledge when it comes to grappling, MMA, or fighting for self-defense. It's safe to say that about 80% of high-level grappling engagements occur in one or another of the forms or manifestations of the guard. Now in this video, we will strive to make it as simple as possible by adopting a principle-based approach for you to understand the main concepts and the main strategies that we're striving to apply from the top as well as from the bottom. We will clearly define the concept of the guard and how it appears, what are the postures that can be adopted in each situation. We'll also be looking at the main battles that are going on in the guard situation, the first one of which being the battle for control of the position. The person on top strives to keep the person on the bottom. On the bottom, the person on the bottom strives to get up to their feet. And that's the first skill you should develop in the bottom guard situation, the ability to get up to your feet. In this context, we'll also be looking at the reality of striking from the top manifested in the form of ground and pound, and from the bottom in the form of predominantly kicks. We'll also be looking at the second battle that's going on in the guard situation, which is the battle for guard passing versus guard retention. Now this in and of itself is a very vast area as well and will be the subject for many future videos. But in this video, we'll strive to at least give you a framework of understanding so you can build those skills in the future. And the last battle that we will touch on, or skill that we will explore, is the skill of developing grappling offense from the bottom, which is more advanced, but we will at least give you the basic tools that you need to start developing those skills. Now, more importantly, we will also be looking at the practice methodology that you should adopt in order to develop those skills safely and effectively. So, I recommend you sit down comfortably, turn off distractions, have pen and paper handy, and be ready to absorb the information in this video. We recommend you watch it at least once all the way through to get a broad sense of understanding of the concept of the guard, come back to it over and over again, and also stay tuned for all the future videos we will be releasing on the specific aspects of the guard. Hi, Patrick Phillip here at Effective Martial Arts HQ, and let's begin by defining the concept of the guard in a grappling context. So the guard is a defensive posture adopted from bottom position on the ground to control an opponent on top. Once again, the guard in a grappling context is a defensive posture adopted from bottom position on the ground to control an opponent on top. So the operative word in this definition is adopted, meaning it's a position you want to be in the bottom position, and your opponent or training partner from the top doesn't want you in this position because it allows you to defend and it allows you to attack. So the main manifestations of this from the bottom and the top we saw in detail in the 7 basic grappling postures. And by the way, you should be familiar with all those basic movements from our white belt grappling playlist, so cards above, in order to be able to execute the techniques with a partner. That being said, it's also good for you to watch this video as well, even if you're not familiar with those basic movements, because it will help you understand the utility and application of those basic movements, which you should practice and be familiar with to execute those techniques. So, the basic postures we can adopt from the bottom. I may be, as the bottom practitioner, seated, either sideways or straight. I may be supine here, straight or sideways as well. And I also may be in a turtle variation where I'm here. I would like to have control of at least one of her legs in this situation. She could be lower or higher. And I can also be in the closed turtle position where if she gets behind me, now I'm interested in closing my elbows to my body so she cannot get hooks or a seatbelt inside. Now, what all these postures have in common is the position of my body is pretty similar, meaning my knee is always close to my chest, here, seated, supine, and my elbows are very close or connected to my knees. This stands in contrast to positions past the guard if she gets around my legs, and now I can't use my legs to defend myself, to control, or to generate much movement. So this would not be a position that I would adopt of my own will. This is a position that she wants to get me in. And now my knees are no longer in my chest, my elbows are not connected to my knees, so knee on belly, full mount, as well as side control, back control, all have this in common where my defensive frames are not in place and my defensive and offensive options for control and offense are very limited. So if we go back, from the top, it's important to know as well the postures that you can adopt in a top position. You can be in the standing position like so, in which case you could be leaning forward and interested in grips, fighting and setting up guard passes. You could be leaning forward like so in the standing position, or you can also be leaning back if you're interested more in striking, applying some pressure and winding up strikes for ground and pound. You could also be a bit lower in a crouching stance from the top here, where your hips and your center of mass is low, and from here also you could be grip fighting, trying to get around the guard. There's different uses for this posture. You could have one knee on the ground to be in a combat-based variation here, which gives you a little bit more stability, as well as being on both knees as well. Here, knees nice and wide, nice wide base. So in these positions, I could be seated relative to her. I could also be on my back here, have my frames in place. We could also be a little bit closer in a closed guard variation, like so, where I would have control of her lower body, but she would still technically have the top position. As well as we can be in variations of half guard, where I would have one of her legs controlled. In this case, I might or might not have this knee in front of me. I might have this knee and this foot in front of me, and she might be a little bit closer, perhaps smashing this knee, or she might be all the way past this leg as well, and this will still be half guard as well. So we're gonna explore that in more detail in future videos, but these are the basic postures that you can adopt from top and bottom. So real quick, in terms of strategy, the person on top is interested in maintaining that top position and preventing me from getting up. So she will be applying leverage with grips, she will be applying pressure, and at the same time threats in the form of ground and pound. So this will all prevent my get up attempts. She's also going to be interested in passing the guard, so ameliorating her position to get around my legs and establish some control on my upper body. And simultaneously, she's going to have to defend grappling attacks from the bottom in the form of grips. So she's going to want to negate those grips and make sure I cannot progress in terms of my grappling offense. Conversely, from the bottom, your first strategic objective would be to get up to your feet, create the distance you need, and use the technical stand-up, which we saw in detail in the previous video. In order to help you do that and to inflict some damage as well, you may also use kicks. So the stomp kick will be very common from the seated position, can give you the space. If you're a bit closer, it could be up kick here. You can also use the drop kick. And if you have the space, you can even use a side kick or even a round kick, low or high, which might give you the space you need to get up to your feet. We're also interested from the bottom position, you need to develop the skill of guard retention, which we'll explore in a lot of detail. We're essentially having your frames in place, fighting grips, maintaining your access so the person cannot get around your legs, and also using strategically the three postures to be seated, supine, as well as turtle as a last resort if the person gets too far, so you can prevent the guard pass. And the last, more advanced strategic objective and skill you will want to develop is grappling offense from the bottom, which always begins in the form of grips, gaining control of part of your partner's body in order either to execute sweeps where you would make your partner fall, possibly expose the back so you can start attacking from there, or even going for upper body submissions where you would start doing strangles and arm bars or different attacks that are grappling based. So we won't go into much detail for all the techniques you can do from the bottom position in terms of grappling offense, but we will give you a good base and a couple very common options, as well as a practice methodology that you need to know in order to develop all those skills safely and effectively with a partner. Alright, so the first battle we're going to explore in more detail is the concept of controlling the position from the top, inflicting damage with ground and pound, versus the strikes that might be coming from the bottom and the stand-up attempts from the bottom practitioner. So the first thing you need to be able to develop in terms of a skill in order to be able to practice this situation and this drill safely is the ability to control the power of your strikes. So example, if I'm the top practitioner and I want to practice my striking, a little bit closer, so don't move. I want to be able to strike and stop my strikes at the very surface without inflicting any damage. That is really important for you to develop as an ability as a martial artist, and is the main reason why people don't like to practice with beginners, because you lack control. So if you develop that ability by practicing, as I just did, you want to swing as fast as you can, but stop at the very surface, you will be able to practice safely and you really minimize the risk for injury. Conversely, as the bottom practitioner, you want to acknowledge those strikes as well. So as the strike is coming, whereas it will not create damage, she has to react to it. So she has to get out of the way, she has to block it, she has to react to that strike, even though I'm controlling the power. If she doesn't do that, and let's say she ignores the strike completely and goes on the offense, that's very annoying, and that's not being a good partner, in this case, in the bottom position. So, that being said, once you have that ability, the main scenarios for ground and pound from the top would be here. If I'm standing, I have the most amount of potential power in my strikes. I could strike a seated opponent, but she's going to want to retreat very quickly from that seated position in order to protect against those strikes. She comes a little bit closer. Here, I want to apply some level of control on the hips. So by having my knee forward over here, controlling the shin or the ankle, I can negate her ability to engage her legs to attack me. And once I have this, I want to be able to come down with my strikes to the face or to the body while maintaining some level of contact with my knee or my shin. That's also possible with both legs in front. I want to pin my knees here together by having my knees on the inside and my feet on the outside. The main danger I need to goaltend here is the possibility of a double ankle sweep. So if she frees her hips, gains control of my ankles, she can start pushing me and pushing backwards so I can fall. So you want to goaltend that, but having a good pinch in the knees here, even if the legs are here, I'm preventing that threat. And from here, I could be striking as well in either one of those positions. If we're disengaged, we can also strike with kicks here to the legs, basic round kick as we would do in striking. And a nice little technique as well, when we are a little bit closer engaged, either in a form of half guard, or that's also possible in the closed guard, will be the cross wrist pin technique. So in general, when you are striking from the top, you don't want to just strike in the defensive structures of your training partner or opponent. If you can get rid of these and control these, you will inflict a lot more damage, and the person on the bottom needs to be able to fight those controlling attempts off. So if I can clear this knee here, if I can do a cross wrist pin where I'm applying pressure and my body weight is going down on her wrist, now she's left with only her cross arm to defend those strikes. So here, knee, boom, strike to the body, strike to the face. That's also possible in the closed guard situation as well. So she's here, I want to be controlling the hips, being mindful of the submission attempts, obviously. And if I can cross wrist pin, putting my weight here on top and come down with strikes, I could also be controlling the biceps over here, pinching the elbows, and from here I can momentarily disengage the control and strike here or here, possibly with elbows as well, and strike downwards. So these are the striking options from the top. From the bottom, she can also strike as well. Since she has her legs wrapped around my body, she can use them to destabilize me and execute elbows from the top, and then possibly couple that with submission attempts, which we are going to see later. Now from the bottom, if there's more space available, you can use that to execute kicks. So we saw this in the detail in a previous video, but basically the stomp kick from the seated position will allow you to now execute your technical stand-up, gives you a little bit of space. We saw this technique in detail also in the previous video. If the person is a little bit closer, you can also do the most frequent one is the up kick, going to the face. This is a great opportunity to practice your control as well. If she brings her face close, you want to be able to stop the kick at the very surface and just touch, but not inflict any damage. So again, the person on top needs to be able to react to that in order for it to be realistic. You can also do a drop kick here to the body or to the face, and if there's more distance, there's the possibility as well of a side kick and even a round kick to the leg or even to the face, which you can follow through now all the way back up to your feet. So these are a little bit more advanced techniques. The first skill you should develop is definitely the skill of just getting up to your feet, and the stomp kick is the simplest variation of this. So in order for you to develop those skills, it's important for you to understand the appropriate practice methodology. So if I am a beginner martial artist and my partner is more experienced, or she's interested in helping me develop the skill of getting up to my feet in bottom guard position, she needs to apply progressive levels of resistance. So she wants to keep me on the bottom position. So as I start trying to disengage. She wants to apply pressure. She can do it with leverage and pulling my leg up, so I need to fight that grip in order for me to reestablish my distance. She can also just push my shoulders down here, and this will make me fall back down to my back. And before I get up, I definitely need to create some level of space in order to get seated before I can then do the technical stand-up. And as you get better, you want to ask your partner to apply a little bit more pressure and maybe threaten strikes at the same time. So you have to react to that. You have to fight the grips here, and if she applies, I need to protect. And as soon as I find the opportunity, boom, I get up. And sometimes the roles might be reversed. If your partner on top has less experience and you want to help them develop the skill of applying control and threats from the top, you might be creating space and starting to get up, but then reminding them of the pressure they need to adopt in order to get me back down to the ground. And then, so I keep threatening get up attempts and forcing her to bring me back down to the ground. So depending on who has the most experience, you're going to need to adjust your level of resistance so both can get something out of it. So that's the first skill you should develop in the guard situation. From top, the ability to apply control, pressure, and be able to practice strikes safely. And from the bottom, being able to fight off that pressure, having your frames in place, and being able to react to those strikes, possibly threatening kicks or strikes of your own, and having the ability to get back up to your feet using the technical stand-up. Alright, so the next battle we're going to explore in more detail is the battle of guard passing versus retention. So this is a vast subject in and of itself. There's a myriad of techniques possible, both from top and bottom. So we're going to try to lay a good framework for your understanding of these concepts, and as well as give you the practice methodology you need to develop those skills. So in terms of guard passing and retention, it always starts with grip fighting. So if you're on the bottom, the person on top, in order to pass the guard, you need to get some form of working grip. So start controlling the hand, possibly getting control of the legs, getting the person on their back, and from there you can start setting up a guard pass. So the first thing you should practice, both from top and bottom, is just your basic grip fighting. So when the person on top gets a grip, you want to fight that grip and negate the grip, possibly try to get a grip of your own. So you want to be relaxed in this situation and flow, don't use too much muscle and be too stubborn with your grips. The same way as with striking, you don't want to use too much power with grips as well. Also, it's in your best interest strategically not to overcommit to any one grip and be ready to take the next one that's available. So this is possible from the supine position. It's also possible in the seated position. You want to negate grips and get eventually grips of your own from the bottom position as well. So grip fighting is the first step, and you should be proficient as that. Again, apply progressive resistance in order to develop that skill. Now, in terms of guard passing, we're going to go through all the main techniques that you can do because there are so many, but we will look at the main directions you can take to pass the guard. And essentially what you want to do is get around the legs. In order to do so, you can go around them, and the technique we're going to see today is the Toreando pass here. So standing guard pass, getting around the legs. You can also go under the legs. So if you put both hands under, you can execute the stack pass and start putting the hips away and get around that way. Or you can go also between the legs, and the technique we're going to look at is the knee slice pass, for which you can use here your frames in order to get around the legs that way. So a few details about those techniques, starting with the Toreando guard pass or standing guard pass. So here she wants to get control of my feet, and typically, so I can limit my ability to move. This is good to apply pressure on the shins this way. And then she wants to maneuver herself with 2 steps. So stepping 1 and 2 here, so her foot comes very close to my hip. From there, she can just drive her knee down to the ground, and then we're on a knee on belly situation, which is a form of side control from which she will be progressing her offense, perhaps to side control, full mount, or another position. So once again, 2 steps here, gaining grip on the legs. So she's limiting my movement, step, step, right next to the hip, and then diving down with the knee. So now my hips are locked. And one last time, here, getting a grip, stepping around, step, step, and limiting my ability to re-guard. We're going to see the defensive movements in a moment. For the stack pass, again, she's getting a grip, and she's limiting my ability to bring my legs back over here. So elevating the hips and then applying pressure so that it's hard for me to execute defense and apply frames to stop her progression. And from there, she can just slide in a position past the guard right into side control. Once again, grip fighting, diving under with both hands in the middle, scooping the hips and switching the hips to the side, applying good pressure so I'm locked in position. And the last one is the knee slide pass where she's going in between the legs. So again, grip fighting, getting in a good position. Here, starting to push the knee out with her other knee and keeping me extended so she can now block my hips. I can't push her away. And now she's in position past the guard in side control. Once again, knee slide, getting her grips, getting one leg in between, getting control of the knee with her other knee, and sliding down past the guard, progressing then to control the upper body in a form of side control. So these are the main options, the most high percentage passes from the top. There are many others as well, and eventually you will develop your own style. Now, in order to practice these passes most effectively, it's important for you also to understand the defensive movements that you will be up against from the bottom. And that brings us to the subject of guard retention from the bottom. So in order to apply good guard retention techniques from the bottom, you will be alternating between the three postures of bottom guard, which are the seated position, supine, as well as turtle as a last resort. So you're going to your knees where you can do wrestling offense, or if the person gets behind you, closed turtle where you're protecting against hooks, and from here you can roll back to guard possibly and reestablish your supine position and then alternate between those different postures. It's a good solo drill, by the way, just flowing from one position to the other. Now, the other very important concept for guard retention on the bottom is the concept of the 5 barriers. So you want to create distance from the bottom so you prevent the opponent from coming too close to you. In order to do so, your barriers are preferably, the first barrier is the bottom of your feet. So as the person is applying pressure and is starting to approach, you want to check them with the bottom of your feet. And this manifests many different ways. If it's my upper body that's coming, she can frame with the upper body, but she's in supine position. She can apply pressure with her feet here, blocking me wherever I go with the bottom of her feet. So the onus is on me as the top practitioner to get those feet out of the way in order to clear the way for a guard pass. She wants to fight that and always get her feet back in between her and I. The next barrier that she will be using is possibly either the knees or the hands extended. So if I clear the feet, then she can use any part of her shin as a frame as well. And she's going to assist that with her arms extended, also the concept we call a stiff arm. So if I start applying pressure, she can block me with her arms already extended so she's not using too much strength, and then she's going to maneuver herself to get her feet back in between her and I. So feet, knees, hands extended. The other possible barrier is also her hips. So if I get past the knees over here, she can start elevating the hips. So she's making her upper body further away from me, and now she can use different movements to get back in between her and I. And the last barrier, if I get around everything else, will be the elbows closed here. So she can use the frame of her elbows, then move her hips, and start re-escalating her barriers to get back more real estate in between her and I. So these are the 5 barriers: feet, knees, hands extended, hips, and then elbows or forearms. In terms of movements that you need to be comfortable with, so there's framing where you're just basically putting something in between you and the person on top. So this is framing, either with the hand or the feet. You can also be executing different movements of mobility with the hips. So these are all basically the variations of shrimping. In the seated position, she could be scooting, so just sliding her hips back. If I start getting too close, and especially if I start stepping in between here, she could just slide back. If I start getting an angle on her and start going to here, she's going to follow me and possibly move her hips in order to keep me in front of her and or reset the distance if I get too close. If we're in the supine position, she can also use the shrimping motion. Once we're past the grip fighting phase, if I get control of her legs and I start getting too close, she's going to slide her hips away, and this will allow her to get her hips and her feet back in between both of us. The other variation of the shrimp, which we saw in detail in the shrimp video, is the air shrimp, which will lead possibly to an inversion. So if, let's say, I block the bottom hip like so, it might be in her best interest to start elevating her hips, spinning around using a shoulder roll, and then resetting her guard that way. And lastly, it's very important for you to be able to, as a last resort, bail to turtle position. So when all else fails and the person gets too close to establishing a position past your guard, it's good for you to be able to turn to your knees and establish a turtle position. From there's a variety of takedowns that she can do, so you want to be comfortable with that. And your preference will always be to go for an open turtle position. The open turtle position is meaning she has some level of control of either my leg or my body with her arm over here. So I want to be mindful of that and defend that position, but then she can attack from there. If she doesn't get that, because that might not always be the case, sometimes I might get behind her, then she wants to really close her elbows and prevent my arms or my feet from getting in to get either hooks or a seatbelt position. And from there, she's going to do her best to reestablish another form of guard, and she's going to roll and bring back her feet in between her and I. And lastly, in terms of practice methodology, for you to be able to develop the skill of guard passing and guard retention, it's important for you to determine who is practicing and be able to adjust the level of progressive resistance that you need in order to develop the techniques and the skill of applying those techniques against progressive levels of resistance. So, for instance, if my partner, let's start with guard retention, and I want her to practice guard retention, I will be applying just a little bit of pressure from the top. And let's say she's not yet very experienced in guard retention, well, my pressure will be very light. I will start getting here, and I notice she doesn't react, so I'll give her the time to react and reestablish her frames. And I might apply a little bit of pressure, get her to react to that. And come closer here. I might put her on her back and get her to play in that situation. You can also isolate the postures as well. Here, I might get around here and let her react to that. Like this, bring her other leg in front. I might move the legs here and let her react to that. Here, so I will get close to passing the guard, but not completing the guard pass, so she can practice her guard retention movements. So here, again, grip fighting, allowing her to fight the grips. Perhaps you can keep it even in the first stage of guard retention, just reminding your partner to fight the grips and not let you control them. If you can go a little bit further and now force them to move their hips in order to reestablish the guard over here. Using the far leg is a very important skill as well, so not always necessary, but yeah, using the top leg here to reestablish the guard. The other very important skill as well that we didn't mention is sometimes it's good for you to just elevate the hips. So if I go over here, she could just shoot her hips up in the air, and that'll allow her to bring her feet back in between her and I. So applying progressive resistance from the top, and the same is possible if roles are reversed. Maybe now it's my turn to practice my guard passing, and she wants to apply progressive levels of resistance, but let me eventually get the guard pass, especially if I'm a beginner in practicing passing the guard. So a little bit closer. I might start not necessarily sure what I'm doing. I'm gonna try to find my access. Maybe, okay, I'm gonna put her on her back, doesn't work. I'll push the leg out here. I'm gonna solve this here, get to the other side, and then, okay, I can control the hips, and now I'm in some form of side control. And then we start again. And as I get better, she will increase her level of resistance, be more aggressive with her grips, make sure I can fight those. So fight me a little bit more on each step. And again, these options are limitless. You can really isolate any part or any technique of that situation and make sure that you're eventually able to get around the guard, like so. So that's your basic practice methodology and the main techniques that you can work with to practice guard passing and guard retention. All right, so the last battle we're going to explore and the more advanced skill involved is grappling-based attacks from the bottom and the corresponding defensive maneuvers you need to know from the top. So this will start the same way as the previous section for guard passing and retention with grip fighting. So you must be comfortable with the previous strategies first, getting up, retaining guard, but then you do want to get or have the possibility to get some offense going from the bottom position as well in terms of grappling. And that will always be getting to either a sweep where you reverse the position and get on top, possibly a back take, or a submission to the upper body or the lower body. So we're going to keep it very simple for the purpose of this video. These techniques, each one deserves its own tutorial, and we will get to it in the future. But let's start by laying the groundwork. So first off, grip fighting. If my partner is interested in attacking me from the bottom position with a grappling-based attack, she first needs to get a working grip on one part of my body or another. So we're going to be grip fighting. So whereas in the previous situation, I was trying to get grips and angle to pass the guard, now she's trying to get grips as well. So not only negating my grips, but getting her own grips, getting control of some part or another of my body in order to progress her attack. So the first attack she can do once she has a good grip is to progress to a sweep. So if she gets closer here, she can possibly start elevating my leg here and make me fall, or force me to post on my hand here and progress her attack from there. I'm going to want to disengage from here. The first sweep you should be comfortable with from the supine position is definitely the tripod sweep like so. So she has control of my foot here with her hand. She has control of my leg with her foot. Could be at the ankle, could be at the knee as well. If it's a little bit higher, could be. And she has a frame in place in my hip over here. So if she extends and pulls at the same time, I will be forced to post and possibly fall down. Now I want to be able to adjust to those attacks as well. So this is a good drill for you to practice. The person on the bottom is trying to sweep the person on top, and the person on top will let them get grips, but then defend those sweeps attempts. So let's say go ahead and try to sweep me. Here, I want to find the grips, find these frames. Here, try to get around this, protect my feet, keep going, lower my level, disengage, technical stand up, get back up, find the grips again, reset my base. So these are the defensive techniques in order to stay in the upright position against sweep attempts. The other thing she might be able to do once she has a working grip is go for a positional attack and possibly getting around to my back. So if she has a good grip on an arm here, she can go for an arm drag and start getting around me here, get control of my hips, possibly get her hooks in and start establishing her seat belt, eventually getting to my back, and now she's in back control and I'm going to need to fight my way out of this. So the other option as well, possibly if a little bit closer, a little bit lower, she can go for upper body submissions as well. So here she has control again of my upper body. Somehow she can shoot a triangle or an arm bar. She gets an arm and my head in between. And she gets an angle, she can break the arm, or she can strangle me with her legs. So we won't go into detail on the specifics of these techniques, but it's important for you to understand that it's a possibility, and you're going to want to know, we're going to explore that in more detail, how to get to each one of those submissions and how to defend them as well from the top. A good drill though, for you to be able to practice the skills that will lead you to those situations both from bottom and from top, is to start in that situation and freestyle it. So the person on the bottom possibly will be getting grips, and I will just be trying to defend those grips and defend those submission attempts. So she can just go ahead and attack, and if she's practicing her submissions, I can let her, right? Progressive resistance. First step, she can practice her submissions, possibly get around here. Now she goes for a strangle like so, and I will attack. She can go for any number of submissions that she wants, and I will let her, but I will just fight her a little bit. Okay, progressive resistance. Keep going. Any submission of your choice. Here, I'm posturing up. Oh, she's going for the omoplata. I might be trying to defend, but if she gets a good position, I can tap. If I want to increase the resistance, I can do my defensive maneuvers from there. Keep going. Any other grappling attack from the bottom. So here, she goes for possibly a sweep. Now I can increase the resistance. I fight her a little bit more. And then I need to negate the grips that she gets. Anything she wants basically is bad for me, so I don't want to let her get it. I want to fight it on every step, but again, not applying too much strength or too much resistance, depending on the outcome that you want. If she wants to get a sweep, here I can reset. Here, possibly a triangle. There we go. I can defend that. Get my arms back in. So we're going to explore each attack and defense in more detail, but again, it's using the concept of progressive resistance so that you can either develop the skill of being able to reach your ends in terms of developing your grappling attacks from the bottom, or practicing your defense as well. She might adjust her level of resistance in order to help me practice defending against those attacks from the top. And that is it, guys. An introduction to the guard situation for grappling, MMA, or fighting for self-defense. Quick recap, the main definition that you should remember is the guard, in the context of grappling, is a defensive posture adopted from bottom position on the ground to control an opponent on top. So this manifests many different ways. You can have the three possible postures of guard from bottom position, which are seated, supine, and turtle. And then for the top practitioner, you can be standing in a forward stance when you're ready to grapple, or more leaning back if your intention is to ground and pound. You could be crouching to have a lower center of mass. You can be in the combat base with one knee on the ground, or you could be kneeling on both knees. Now, in terms of the relative engagement, you can be in open guard, you can be in closed guard, any variation of half guard, and there are many possible subdivisions for each one of these categories of guard. Now, the main thing that we want you to take out of this video, first off, is your practice methodology, meaning always practicing with safety in mind, controlling the power of your strikes, controlling the finishing of your submissions, controlling the distribution of your weight when you're in a top position, as well as the main top and bottom basic strategy, the objectives that you're striving for in each one of those situations. So as the top practitioner in the guard situation, you're looking to keep the other person on the ground, possibly execute attacks in the form of ground and pound, striking-based attacks, always with control so you don't actually hurt your partners. But then from the bottom, you want to acknowledge those attacks so you are a good partner and you can learn to react to them in a tactically and technically sound manner. The next objective you should have from the top is to strive to pass the guard. The three techniques that we saw in this situation are the standing guard pass or toreando guard pass, going around the legs. There are other techniques to do so. You can also go under the legs with the stacked pass, as well as there's the knee slide pass, going in between the legs, getting your knee in between, and don't forget to get your underhook on the far side. From bottom, we saw that our basic strategy would be to get back up to our feet as soon as possible. In order to do so, we may use kicks, so side kick, stomp kick, round kick, up kick, drop kick, as well as any variations of the technical stand-up to get back up to our feet. In order to do so, we also need to be proficient in the skill of guard retention, so using our three postures in good conjunction, going from seated to supine to turtle when it's appropriate. Understanding our barriers as well to keep the distance between us and our opponents, so using the bottom of our feet, preferably our knees, our hands extended, our hips, and that's where the role of inversions come into play, as well as our elbows or forearms as a last resort. And the last skill we explored in this video, and the corresponding defensive maneuvers you should know from the top, is grappling-based offense from the bottom. So understanding the grips that you need in order to pursue your attacks, which will take the form either of sweeps, so make your opponent on top fall and regaining the top position for yourself, or progressing to submission-based attacks, so getting control of either a limb or of the neck and the head, so execute either a joint lock in the case of a limb, or a strangulation in the case of the neck, so you can make your opponent go unconscious and thereby win the engagement. So in all those cases, in order to develop those skills both from top and from bottom, it's important you understand the proper practice methodology, specifically using progressive resistance in order to develop the skill of executing the techniques and problem solving in real time. So you can eventually be able to apply these techniques on a qualified, skilled, and fully resisting other human being, which will be the goal in order to call yourself an effective martial artist, that you're able to apply those techniques in a real situation. To do so, the drills that we outlined are learning to stand up under pressure and conversely being able to keep the person on the bottom and possibly executing ground and pound attacks to do so. Then we have the skill of guard passing, so you want to be able to overcome the retention movements of the person and execute your guard pass. Conversely, you want to be able to negate those guard pass attempts and practice your guard retention from the bottom, as well as overcome progressive levels of resistance from the bottom when you want to practice your grappling-based attacks, and knowing how to defend those attacks, which has to do a lot with your posture, keeping your elbows in a nice sound defensive position and not exposing any parts of your body for the person to attack, be it that neck or your limbs for joint locks. Now lastly, as you become more proficient in each of those areas, it's interesting sometimes to freestyle the situation and perhaps pick a particular type of guard that you want to practice and see what the person's reaction or attacks can be in that situation. And then freestyle it, do what we call situational sparring, so you can really develop those skills in that specific area. When you are doing situational sparring, it's important that you start in that situation, and as soon as you get out of that situation, you stop and reset to go back into that situation to develop the skills that you set out to practice. That being said, once you are well-rounded, it's also good to practice generally and do free sparring, which you can even start on the feet, going for strikes, wrestling attacks, and takedowns and defense. And if you wind up on the ground, do your best to apply your guard skills from top and from bottom. In any case, make sure that you always apply safety in everything that you do. You should always be responsible for your partner's safety as well as for your own safety, so that you can all stay healthy and practice for a long time. Because martial arts is potentially a lifelong endeavor, and you definitely want to take care of your body so that you can really get the maximum levels of improvement. So once again, hope you've enjoyed this video. If that's the case, please like, comment, share, subscribe, and stay tuned for all the other videos that we have coming soon, exploring in more detail all the different subtleties and variations, as well as techniques that are possible in the guard situation, as well as other aspects of grappling, as well as striking and wrestling. Because this is what we do here at Effective Martial Arts in our school and on our channel. We basically created one curriculum, one belt system for MMA, encompassing striking, wrestling, and grappling. So stay tuned for what's coming next. Really excited about all the awesome videos we got coming for you. Signing off, Patrick Phillip here at Effective Martial Arts HQ in Pointe Claire, West Island of Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Thank you very much for watching. Practice well.